that barring some truly unforeseen circumstance, Donald Trump would be the president in November.
Biden versus Trump. This week, Donald Trump, fresh from surviving an assassination attempt, was formally voted in as Republican candidate for the presidential election later this year. But the Democratic camp is unsettled. The party when the party finally meets to confirm who they want to be their nominee, will it be Joe Biden? Well, joining us now is Fran Luntz, a political communications consultant and pollster, probably the political communications and consultant and pollster in America. Hello to you, Frank.
Hello, and I got to tell you, I always thought that British politics was a fascinating, compelling story, but it's nothing like what's happening right now. Your referendum on whether to leave or remain in Brexit was low key compared to whether Joe Biden stays or goes as the Democratic nominee and the presidential candidate.
There's a fascinating interview with you in the Times yesterday, which people can still find on the app. And your conclusion, Frank, is really this election in November is now Donald Trump's to lose. Would that be right?
It's correct, and let me give you the three reasons why. Number one, every Trump voter is going to participate in November. He's going to convert 100% of his supporters. Joe Biden, the intensity and the commitment is much less, and it's chaos within the Democratic Party is going to hurt whoever's the Democratic nominee. Number two is that Trump is already ahead in some of the key swing states by more than the margin of error. Nevada, Arizona, where your listeners pull out their maps, Georgia, North Carolina. In fact, the only states that are too close to call are Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. With the states that I mentioned before, that gives Donald Trump 268 electoral votes. You now have to add Virginia and Minnesota to the list of states that could swing. Joe Biden would have to win, or the Democratic nominee. And notice I have to keep saying that because they're not clear who's going to be representing the Democrats. They would have to win every one of those swing states without exception to get 270 electoral votes or more. And
is there anything the Democrats could do? Would changing Joe Biden for someone else, Kamala Harris, would that help?
It depends on who it is. I listened to your interview or your news broadcast, your news bulletin, and the voice said from the Democratic Party that Kamala Harris has been perfectly prepared to be president. Well, the American people, the Democrats may think so, but the American people do not. And in fact, her numbers are as bad as Joe Biden's numbers nationwide. That the public believes that she does not know the information, that she has not learned her brief, that she has not been an active participant in the last 4 years, and that in fact, you can see her staff turnover and the chaos in her office as examples of why she will be really challenged should she step up. And I think that odds are now, if you ask me to project into November, I think it will be Trump versus Harris. And I think that's the third reason why Trump wins, that Harris is just not seen as a viable presidential candidate or a viable president by too many in the American public.
So your reading is that Biden is going to go?
I say this at every interview. I've known him now for 30 years. He's an awesome human being. I've probably spent more time at his home than the vice president has. I taught his son, Beau. I'm a friend of his son, Hunter's. I acknowledge that. I embrace that. And yet, his performance was so awful in the debate. We held a focus group, and you can see this online if you go hunting for it. 14 truly undecided, truly swing voters from those key swing states. 12 of the 4, I've never had this before. 12 of the 14 swung from undecided to Trump. Only one of them went to Biden, one stayed undecided. In all the time, my professional career of doing these kinds of tests, I've never had something so unanimous. And even the American public, just the general public, 2 out of 3 Americans thought Trump won that debate. And these are people who don't even like Donald Trump. So I will emphasize Trump's persona is still a challenge. He doesn't realize it. He thinks people love him because of his rallies. There's still tens of millions of people who don't like him as a person and yet will vote for him because they think that Joe Biden is simply too old. And they're looking not at the election, but they're looking at the next 4 years. And they're afraid of a 4-year Biden presidency.
You are, describe yourself as a Thatcherite and a Reaganite. Could you ever vote for Donald Trump and JD Vance?
I have, as a pollster, who in recent years, over the last 10 years, I stopped being partisan and I stopped participating in the presidential. I still vote, but I stopped participating in the presidential race because I want to be able to report in a straightforward fashion. Notice this morning, I'm emphasizing that it's Biden's age, not his record. It's Trump's persona, not his issues. More people believe that Donald Trump can handle inflation, which is still tough in America, and immigration, which is becoming the number one issue. The difference between Trump and Biden is night and day in terms of public opinion. So I've stayed out of it to allow me to be objective and not to be a Republican pollster anymore, to be an objective pollster who sees every side of every issue, of every situation. And that's gotten me into some trouble among my friends, and it's opened up a relationship among people who didn't like me 10 or 20 years ago because of my partisanship. I'm committed to being accurate, and that's why I'm saying you today that barring some truly unforeseen circumstance, Donald Trump would be the president in November.
I think I'm fair to say, in spite of your your non-partisanship, you yourself have big reservations about JD Vance.
Um, I I don't think I have more reservations about Harris than I do about Vance. My only issue with Vance is that I think that opening up the choice to somebody like a Marco Rubio or Tim Scott, the JD Vance doubles down on working class, blue collar, uh, people who live literally paycheck to paycheck. JD Vance understands them better than Donald Trump does. He understands them better than virtually any other Republican because he was one. He grew up that way. But it doesn't expand Trump's base. Whereas Marco Rubio could have reached out to Latinos who are voting Republican in numbers that we've never seen before, or Tim Scott to appeal particularly to young African American men. A third of them are looking at Trump right now. That's never happened before. So my issue with Vance was the choice reinforced where Trump is strong rather than trying to go after other voters.
Frank, I know you've had some health problems of late. Thank you very much indeed for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you in this country.